I'm not really the type of person to make videos, so it's a bit sad for me that this is my first. But I wanted to come on here, make a video about my journey with XDefiant, why I thought the game was great, and what I thought basically made the game fail. These are my opinions, but feel free to let me know in the comments what you think went wrong. In the background is just going to be some recent gameplay, so please sit back, get yourself a cup of tea, grab some snacks, and enjoy. Okay, to start things off, I just wanted to share why I wanted this game to do well, and what it was about it that captured me. I feel like to understand that, you should probably understand me a little bit first. So I, as a person, am extremely competitive. I'm competitive inside of gaming, I'm competitive outside of gaming. I just want to be the best I can be at pretty much everything I do. It's not necessarily healthy, but it's how I am. And when I found out about XDefiant, one of the things that stood out for me was the roadmap. The devs were talking about it being around for the next 5-10 years. They had plans and stuff for the next 8 seasons. And that's something in my mind that just straight away captured me. I wanted to play the game. I was interested. For me, the types of games that do well are ones that are around for a long time, where as a person, the core mechanics of the game aren't going to change. So when you play a game like Call of Duty, obviously it's on like a yearly cycle where every year a new game will come out, mostly new maps, new mechanics will be added. This year, for example, Omni Movement's been added, which is a great addition, don't get me wrong, but the fundamentals of the game have changed so much over the years. We went from boots on the ground to flying around, back to boots on the ground. Like, there's so many changes that have happened over the years, and I feel like that's why at one stage Call of Duty was a massive esport, and now it's not really considered that. When you look at games like League of Legends, Rocket League, Valorant, CSGO, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals now coming in, these sort of games they're going to be around for a long time. The core mechanics of the game won't change, the maps won't change. There will be additions, but the old maps that you've learnt will still be there, so you can just spend time learning the new maps. For instance, in a game like XDefiant, the guns would have been around, new guns would have been added, but again, the old guns will always be there. Characters, the old characters will stay, new characters will be added, and you can learn them. But the core mechanics of the game, the fundamental side of the game, will always be around. And that's something, when the devs were talking about 5 to 10 years worth of planning, that's something that really captured me. I thought, yeah, this is the game that I can sink my teeth into, like I did with Rocket League. This is the sort of thing where I can learn the maps, learn the gunplay, learn the movement, learn everything, and know that every hour I put in is going to be worthwhile. When XDefiant finally released, I couldn't get enough of it. I was playing the life out of it. I couldn't stop playing. I couldn't let go of it. We all know about the mess that took place before release, but we finally had it, and that was something that I was so happy about. Match after match, game after game, me and my friends were having a blast. It was some of the best time I've had playing video games in a long time. It took me back to my childhood. The gameplay felt smooth, the maps were colourful and refreshing, which is something that I feel like had died in Call of Duty. Everything felt so dark in Call of Duty, and these maps were so bright and vibrant. And I was finally starting to feel an itch that hadn't been scratched in a long time finally get scratched. It was so good that I could see, in my eyes, not only a game compete with the likes of COD, but one that I actually loved more, and one that I felt like I was going to be able to play and invest time in over the next few years. So, what went wrong? So, when it comes down to the downfall of XDefiant, I feel like there are so many different opinions on it and why it could have gone wrong. Some people might talk about the delays before release and how, a lot of players might have been deterred from that. I personally don't think that was a big problem, considering when XDefiant did release, there were, it was one of Ubisoft's most popular releases, so I don't really feel like that was a big issue. Other people might talk about the technical issues, such as the netcoding problems. This is something that I could see kind of deterring a lot of players away, but for anyone that did stick around, which was a lot of people after the first few updates, the developers were on it. They were trying their best to fix it. It was improving with every update. There was the developers were on it, and I feel like it being on a new engine, the developers would have got there eventually. The other reason that I've seen is that people were talking about sort of glitches that were around at the beginning of the game and how that could have scared people off. But again, these were all addressed and they were all fixed pretty quickly from the developers. So I don't really see that being the ultimate problem. For me, what I think the big issue with XDefiant is it kind of ties back into what I said earlier, and that's just how gaming has evolved in general. Now, there are two types of gamers in the world, I believe. There are competitive gamers like myself, and there are casual gamers. Casual gamers take up a large majority of the player base in any game. There's more casual gamers than there are competitive gamers. However, how does this really affect XDefiant? I feel like it's down to how XDefiant released, the state of the game when it released, and how there was no real way for it to cater to both casual gamers and competitive gamers. Now, when XDefiant released, it had something massive going for it, which is something that players still love today, and that's the fact that there's no skill-based matchmaking. Now, the issue with there being no skill-based matchmaking is that in the game's state on release, there was no competitive game mode to go with it. So what this meant is that basically casual players were going into games and getting absolutely rolled every single match, because the competitive players like myself were kind of using the casual game mode as the competitive game mode because there was nowhere else to go. I mean, on release, XDefiant didn't have a ranked playlist. It didn't have a complete training ground. It didn't have a private match feature. There were so many things that kind of took away from competitive players that meant competitive players were getting that itch scratched in the casual game mode. The reason why I feel like this was a big downfall is because, like I said, casual gamers occupy a large majority of player bases. When you're getting rolled every single game, you're not going to want to play the game anymore. And I feel like that was where, XDefiant kind of went wrong. It's not necessarily the fact that they had no skill-based matchmaking. I love the fact that they had no skill-based matchmaking. I'm sure a lot of players did. But there was loads of players, I have friends, family, my cousin, for instance. He's a very casual gamer and he was going into games with me. And after like 2 days of playing XDefiant with me, he just said to me, I'm not going to play this anymore because I'm just getting killed all the time. And that's kind of the way the game was, like there was no casual experience in XDefiant. As a competitive gamer, whenever I play casual game modes, I do it for that reason. I want to be casual, but because there was nowhere for me to be competitive, I had to be competitive in casual, so it's such a hard one to get right, especially if I feel like if you're going to release a game with no skill-based matchmaking in this current era of video gaming, you need to have a ranked playlist on release, and there's no way around it. Now, it's a double-edged sword because I feel like for competitive gamers as well, the fact that there was no competitive game mode or, private match feature caused massive issues. Now, I'm a very goal-driven person. I've spent loads of hours playing games like Rocket League, and one of the big driving forces is knowing where I'm at and working to get to the next level. Now, the only way that I would know if I'm improving or getting better usually is to do with my rank. If I'm, for instance, gold, and I want to get up to that next level, which might be platinum, I know that when I get to platinum, I've improved, right? It's common sense. Now, there's no real way of getting that satisfaction because I'm rolling people in pubs, and I don't really, in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm doing really well. There's nowhere for me to go. XDefiant didn't release a rank mode until a month later, and that's so much time for casual players to just run away from the game, and even for competitive players to run away because there was none of that goal-driven aspect that you get from gaming, that you need in gaming in these days. So yeah, I mean, that's where I feel like a large majority of the player base went. The casual gamers were leaving because they were getting beaten badly every game, and the competitive gamers were leaving because they didn't really have anywhere to to track their progress or develop. There was no training, there was no private matches, there was no competitive game mode for a month. So yeah. Also, when it comes down to just touching on that, the fact that there was no private matches meant that there was nowhere to do early tournaments. I mean, one of the biggest features in creating a sort of competitive scene and an esports scene is private matches. Being able to run small tournaments, whether they be LAN tournaments, online tournaments, whatever it may be. That wasn't available at the time because there was no private matches released. So there was nowhere for these small tournaments, whether they be displayed on Twitch or whatever. There was nowhere for competitive players to go, and for also the people who wanted to watch that to see it. So I mean, it was, there was no exposure really for the game. It kind of went into a place of stagnation where, like I said, casual gamers were leaving, competitive gamers were leaving, and ultimately XDefiant tried to fix those problems a little bit later than they needed to. I mean, a whole month. I know that doesn't sound like a long time, but 30 days in a new video game's life cycle is a long time, and to have 30 days with no ranked playlist is absolutely crazy, because those casual gamers could have just gone into ranked and stuck in their bronze lobbies and enjoyed it there. The casual playlist would have been for casual competitive players who wanted to just go and have a casual experience, and everyone else could have had a great time. So yeah, I mean, at this point it's a shame, because everything that is required for the game to succeed in that department has now released, but it's a little bit too late. I mean, with Black Ops 6 being a big success for Call of Duty and XDefiant shutting its doors on new players, it doesn't really have a chance anymore. What I really, really hoped XDefiant would do is give us at least a year with the game in its current state. I mean, I understand them looking at shutting the game down if the game isn't seen as a success, but to not even give it the chance to breathe when it's finally at a state which I feel like could be considered full release, to me it just seems like they're not even giving it the opportunity to flourish. Give us the game for a year, see how much it can grow. The tools are there now for the competitive scene to grow, the casual scene to be literally casual. New players would join and be able to enjoy the experience. It just seems like a huge waste of potential. I know no one's listening, but I just wish Ubisoft would open the doors, give us a 6 months period with for new players to come in, see what it's like, and then if there was to be, it's wishful thinking, but if there was to be hundreds of thousands of players, millions of players join, that would be the saver there. That would be what saves the game from ultimately dying. But it seems like Ubisoft, I'm not going to say the development team, but Ubisoft seem to have just rolled over and given up on the game completely before it really had a chance to get moving. So I wish Ubisoft would change their approach and just let the game be open, let new players join, let new people experience it, and I'm sure so many people would fall in love with this game and love it just as much as I do. Maybe in a different way, but love it nonetheless. I am really, really sad to see XDefiant go. I do hope that future developers will learn from the mistakes made here. It's sad to see such a high potential game just wasted really. It is really, I'm lost for words. Like, I am just sad about it. But yeah, thank you for the memories, XDefiant. It has been fun.